Our people in Kaktovik will not allow destruction of land or destruction of animals. We'll be the stewards for the people of the No Slope.
It's who we are. I mean, you can't take something away from a person and expect them just to live a whole brand new way of life. It's the way we were raised. It's our whole way of life. It's been our way of life for thousands of years.
These are the voices of this otherwise silent and untouched land. This is Alaska's coastal plain, the 1002 area of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, the area industry wants to explore for oil and gas, the space environmentalists call America's last great wilderness. It is also the calving ground for the caribou, which are nowhere to be found during this month of August. It is also the center of life for native people who live off the caribou. Across this waterway from 1002 is the Eskimo village of Kaktovik, population 260. This is a community that wants drilling desperately, a community that's still learning to find its way among the old and the new. People here thrive on the ancient tradition of hunting the caribou, at the same rate they struggle with modern-day economic problems.
Well, a gallon of milk will cost almost $10 a gallon, and that's freight. The homes that they built here are just under $300,000, and half of that is freight and construction cost.
As president of Kaktovik's native corporation, Fenton Rexford spends less time on his boat these days and more time lobbying in Washington for drilling. Rexford believes drilling can be done safely without harming the caribou. He looks to Alaska's Prudhoe Bay as an example of how nature and industry can live hand in hand. This is from a man who once feared Prudhoe Bay development.
We wouldn't allow the animals to be destroyed. We care for the land and care for the animals, probably more than any folks that are living in this area.
It's not just the corporate people who want drilling. Fishermen and hunters support oil exploration too.
I want it for my future generations, for my kids. I think they deserve a shot like us, what we got. I mean, you guys are accustomed to flush toilets. You go to my house, you will have a honey bucket.
Mothers envision an easier lifestyle for their kids, and they want to guarantee a future employment for their families.
This place here is so small. Most of the jobs are taken, and there's some kids that are graduated. They still don't have jobs that are permanent.
It's unclear how much money this community would actually get from drilling, but at the minimum, industry would pay for disturbing the area. The money could be used to pay for new projects like a daycare center. Native corporate shareholders could also earn money through private land that's leased to industry. Leaders would also have zoning and permitting powers. Kaktovik's Mayor Lonson Sala says that's exactly why the borough can protect the caribou.
I mean, this is our backyard, and to us this is the most precious thing in the world, and we don't want to see anything bad happen out here, and let us make sure it doesn't. You know, that's our job.
If you travel 150 miles south from Kaktovik, you'll find yourself here in Arctic Village. Like Kaktovik, this is a small native community which is close to the Arctic Refuge. In fact, if you cross this river here, you'll find yourself at the start of the refuge. But unlike Kaktovik, this community opposes drilling. The people here fear that drilling will harm the caribou.
We depend on this caribou, you know, because this is the way of life for us. This is the way that we live in this part of the country, in which people have depended on this caribou for many generations.
The Gwich'in people have lived in Arctic Village since the late 1800s. Before that, they were a nomadic people. Today, Gwich'in, like Gideon James, also gravitate between the old and new. James lives in a house he built himself that has electricity but no plumbing. He has lived and been all over the world, and yet this is still home. James says the caribou is also still his source of sustenance. He fears drilling will drive away the caribou and change their migratory patterns.
I don't think my people, and also that includes me, would support drilling in Anwr at any time or any time in the future.
Arctic Village has a population of about 150. The center of town is the council office, which is wired for the internet and is the meeting place for most in the community. Life here has changed slowly, so much so that even the young people who are versed in computers and the ways of modern Alaska still feel a connection to the land and the caribou.
It's been our way of life for thousands of years. It's in our blood, it's in our soul, and you can't just take that away from somebody and expect them to keep on living.
The elders here, like Reverend Trimble Gilbert, remember the days when more caribou would roam the nearby lands. Gilbert says development may have driven some caribou away. He fears drilling in 1002 would harm the porcupine caribou herd, which is crucial to the Gwich'in culture.
If there's no caribou in this country, I don't know how we're going to survive, and we don't know where to go either. There's no place for us to go, and this is our country here.
Critics of this community point to the 1980s when tribal leaders agreed to lease some of their land for oil and gas exploration. Today, the chief of Arctic Village stresses that the lease did not affect the caribou calving grounds. He also says the lease was just for exploration.
No, I don't think we would have allowed development, and I don't think that no matter how much money you can throw at our people that we'd be interested in switching our position on protection of the refuge.
Leaders here say their community can survive without big oil. Indeed, many here stress moving away from fossil fuels. To make its point, the community powers its washing facilities with solar panels.
The oil development in Prudhoe Bay has only been around for a couple of years, not even longer than my own lifetime. And I think that the impacts, the real impacts on the land and the animals and even the people there aren't really understood.
Whatever happens here in 1002 will be decided thousands of miles away in Washington, thousands of miles away from the people who live off this land. Whatever the outcome, though, it will be a struggle for tradition, a struggle for progress, and a struggle for survival. Seth Linden, Channel 2 News on Alaska's Coastal Plain.